亲爱的观众朋友们，大家好，欢迎大家收看加拿大国际电视台大型时政栏目《议政厅》，我是主持人杨毅。大家知道呢，在这一季的《议政厅》，也就是我们《议政厅》第一季呢，主要针对的是2015年即将到来的联邦大选。那么我们又是一个中文的栏目，所以我们邀请的都是能够讲中文或者听得懂中文的联邦议员的候选人那么第一手的跟大家介绍情况。但我们今天这位嘉宾呢有一点不一样因为他呢讲的是客家话。客家话其实是古代的中原人来到南方，依然保留了古汉语的很多传统的这样一个中文。从某种角度上来讲，比普通话更接近于中国汉语的本源。不过问题来了，我听不懂了，所以这次的话呢，是我听不懂嘉宾的汉语，那么怎么办呢？所以我们还是要请这位嘉宾在这一期节目当中呢，用英语来完成这次访谈。那我们接下来有请本次节目的嘉宾，加拿大自由党的联邦国会议员的候选人陈胜元先生，有请陈先生。你好，
你好 ，Nice to see you, Patrick.
Nice to see you.
Yes.
可以讲一点简单的国语不过大部分的国语我听不懂，所以还请您讲英文
谢谢。
请坐。那么同时我们也请Fiona Su来帮助我们、协助我们完成这次的访谈。那么刚才其实一开始上我已经跟大家介绍了，您是讲客家话的。
对。
要不您先授一点客家话给我们大家听，用客家话跟观众打个招呼可以吗？
大家好，我名字陈胜元。
你看，基本上后来3个字我听懂了，陈胜元。前面的话有点听不太懂不过没关系，您听得懂我的国语就好了那么我们怎么样子来到加拿大
？So I was born in Toronto and I grew up in Scarborough, lived in Scarborough my whole life. My parents were from India and they were born and raised in Calcutta and came to Canada in the 1970s. 我的 grandparents 有中国来的from 梅山 in Guangdong province.
刚才我听你刚说的话，我还纳闷这印度怎么也讲这个客家话？实际上是您的祖辈是讲客家话，然后一代一代传下来的。明白了。但是您是在多伦多出生的。
对。
那么小学、中学、大学都在多伦多是吗？
Yes. I did my public school in the old Scarborough Board of Education, and then it became Toronto District School Board. And I've been a student at University of Toronto for my bachelor's, my master's, and also working on my PhD.
都在脚下的这一片热土，都在多伦多了。要讲起来
，Yes.
这个我还真知道。我了解了一下，您在年轻的时候，当然您现在也年轻我说您在学生的时候就已经非常的杰出。好像是得过无数的奖项，其中有一项叫做这个是最值得关注的100个加拿大人，有没有这个奖项
？Well, it was many years ago when I just graduated from high school, and I was on their list of 100 young Canadians to watch. So there's some high expectations put on me now.
100个最值得关注的年轻人，这点上我们有共同点。30年前我也是。100个最值得关注的年轻人在我们学校里。
How many students were at your school?
那200多呢。这开一个玩笑。我知道在全加拿大作为100个最值得关注的年轻人，而且是所有的加拿大那个年龄段的孩子，对吧？就是年轻人呢，也不是那个年龄段的孩子。那么是为什么让您走进了这个加拿大这样子主流的关注，能够成为100个最受关注的年轻人？当时您都做了些什么
？When I was in high school, I was very involved, and I was chair of the Scarborough Youth Council. I did volunteer work at the local hospital and did a lot of activities within the local community. And one of the things that I was very passionate about was to organize activities and initiatives around anti-racism. So making sure that we are celebrating our diversity and fighting against discrimination and hatred in our community. And those are the reasons why they included me on that list.
那个时候的话，就是您就读的时候，华裔的孩子多不多呀？
It changed because when I was growing up, when I started school in the 1980s, there was very little diversity. I was one of only a few people of Chinese descent in my classroom. So I knew what it meant to be different. And I knew what it meant to be different from my cultural background, but also through my parents who were immigrants and their experiences, the attitudes and the discrimination that they faced. I experienced that too. I know what it feels like to be in that classroom and be the only one that is different. And that really shaped who I am and what I did in terms of my life. And I believe it's made me who I am today.
然后您毕业了之后又做什么了呢？
Well, after graduation, I went off to university, and I eventually graduated with my computer science degree from my undergrad, and I did a second major in equity studies. And for me, I believe I studied computer science because all my cousins, I'm an only child, but all my cousins that are older than me were either going to become doctors or scientists. And so for me, I put that expectation on me, but I realized after I graduated that I was much more passionate about making a difference in the community. And I decided to run for school board trustee when I graduated with my bachelor's, and fortunately, very humbling experience to have won that election. My first election in Scarborough Rouge River trustee in the Toronto District School Board, and that was in 2006. So it was quite an experience running in that campaign.
那是从高中就开始选举，所以说对选举的话，那是用一句话讲，选举要从娃娃抓起。您那时候当然也不是娃娃了啊，很早就开始了。那您大学毕业了之后就直接，因为我知道您的身份，从认识您的时候就知道您是教育局的教育委员，然后的话呢，后来是教育局的这个副主席，包括后来的主席。所以您是不是大学毕业之后就直接进入这个教育局工作了，还是在中间还有一些其他的经历？
Well, it was interesting because when I was working on my undergraduate, I was working at one point for a software company, working as a consultant, as a project manager, and I enjoyed the experience, but I wasn't passionate about it. And so I decided to run in the municipal election in 2006, which was the same year I graduated with my undergrad and was able to win the trustee seat in Ward 21 Scarborough Rouge River and was re-elected again in 2010, after which I became the vice chair 3 times, and then this past year had the honor of serving as the chair of the TDSB.
对啊，所以这一下子我搞明白了，您其实大部分的经历都是跟教育系统有关系啊。我们讲叫教育系统有关系。不过要讲到这个，因为我们知道您06年是做教育委员，然后是又成功的连任，然后作为副主席。但是这个好像您被指定为主席之后没几天，您这又辞掉了，又选这国会议员，那当时为什么要去当这个主席啊？
I did not expect to run for chair. In fact, I had served 3 times as the vice chair of the board, and in 2014 I knew I was seeking the nomination for the Liberal seat in Scarborough North, but my colleagues came to me, the trustees on the board came to me and said, Sean, we really want you to put your name forward as chair. We had just elected a new board of trustees. There was a very large turnover. Out of the 22 trustees, 11 were new trustees and 11 returning. I was the only one that had 3 years of experience as the vice chair. And to me, when your colleagues ask you and they put you in that situation where you're being called to duty, I felt a responsibility, and I wanted to make a difference. The board had faced some challenges in the past, and it was very important to have proper leadership to move the board forward in a positive way. I have the wonderful pleasure of representing an area that has such an incredible diversity. And over the last 9 years, I've always said that my cultural background as someone who is of Chinese descent allows me to bring a particular perspective. At the school board, I've been able to champion some very important causes that are helpful to our community. Number one, I fought for ESL funding. In 2008, in fact, I worked with former trustee Su Wang, who is now an MPP, and we worked together to fight to make sure that we have more ESL funding for our school system. And our motion that we moved brought in an additional $11.5 million to support our new immigrant students.
就是这个区还是
For all of Toronto.
For all of Toronto.
Yeah, for all of Toronto. And in 2009, I moved a motion that was very important to me, and that was to ensure that we teach the World War II history in Asia in our school system. Working with Toronto Alpha and Dr. Joseph Wong, who has been working to ensure that the history of the comfort women, what happened during World War II, the hundreds and thousands of children and women who were forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese Imperial Army, that we don't forget. Because I know when I was growing up, I did not learn this history in school. I did not learn, and it was only through watching the film Iris Chang that I realized there's a whole part of history that is missing from what we teach our children. And we can't be exclusive when we teach history. We have to make sure we include the whole story. And so to me, it was very important to push that. And I remember talking to my grandfather about it, and he told me so much history that I never learned in school.
你一说，我真的是特别有同感，因为我的侄女在这读书，他们不知道在2次世界大战时候，中国作为一个同盟国参加过这个战争，那么也不知道在亚洲战场上对整个同盟国的胜利起到多大的作用，就特别重要的意义。可是，在当地居然没有太多人知道，所以我个人对您刚才说那个话题啊，特别的有同感。所以说我先代表我个人来谢谢您啊。那您在当主席的时候，有没有知道你要去？这个要做这国会议员的选举，有没有告诉他们你要来做这国会议员的选举啊？
They asked me about it, and in fact, we had already held a press conference to announce the seeking of the nominations. So it was quite public knowledge, but I felt really humbled because my colleagues, in spite of the fact that they knew I was seeking a nomination and potentially running in the next federal election, decided that they wanted me as their chair. And when we do our chair elections, we do them every year. So every December we meet as a board. So I'm very pleased to have been able to work over this past year to move the board forward. I also want to say that it was important for me to step down as chair because at this point we're in a federal election. And so to me, the right thing to do was to step down, allow the board to have someone who can take over and guide the board forward. And at the same time, I'm taking a leave of absence from my trustee role. I will still help constituents in any way I can, but I've decided not to accept any salary because that's the right thing to do. Public service has very little boundary. My role as a trustee is very similar to what another municipal politician like a councillor or a provincial or federal member would do. First and foremost, we're there to represent our constituents and to listen to the concerns that are on the ground, to bring forward the voice of the public. And that's why we have a democratic system. That's why we have open government, is that you can elect people there to fight for the people and to bring those issues forward. And that's what I've been doing now for 9 years as a local elected trustee.
也就是说，实际上你已经是对公众宣布你要竞选这个国会议员，然后他们同时也都知道，但是当时这个条件嘛，因为是太多的新的 director 需要，您出来，就是把你的一些经验呐，然后呢帮助大家走上正轨，然后的话呢，把这边工作做得差不多了，您去选国会议员，然后做这个下一步的安排。不过说到这儿，我就有一点。其实我自己也不是很明白，这个市教育局，他做什么事？这个联邦他有没有主管教育的这样的一个部门？因为我看您的背景大部分是个教育的有关，是不是省也有教育的这个主管的部门？这3级政府的这个教育方面是怎么样的一个区分呢、划分呢、责任呢、义务，能不能跟我们 先介绍一下。
The issues are different. Some of them overlap. Obviously, at the school board level, we're focused on education in the elementary and secondary levels. When it comes to provincial government, they are responsible for post-secondary education and training, colleges and universities. But they also are responsible for elementary and secondary education because they are in charge of the funding. So the province sets the funding for education, and they also set the provincial curriculum. And once the province sets funding and provincial curriculum, all the school boards, all the 72 public school boards in Ontario must follow what the provincial government sets. When it comes to the federal level, federal government isn't directly responsible for education currently because it's a responsibility of the provincial government. But to me, there's an important role that the federal government can take in education. When you look at other countries, other highly developed countries, they have national education strategies. That's right. There's a Ministry of Education in China that is across the country. And in Canada, it's so important for us because when you look at the economy, when you look at job growth, you have to look at what you are training your future generation, what skills and knowledge you're providing the young people, because they ultimately are going to be the workers of tomorrow. And if we're serious about building the middle class, if we're serious about creating opportunities, then we've got to talk about what our kids are learning. And over the past 10 years, we've seen a decline in the amount of opportunity that our young people have. We've seen a disappearance of the middle class. We've seen wages stabilize and the cost of living continue to increase. And to me, that is very concerning. When you look at the Statistics Canada reports, it tells you that right now, youth unemployment is at a record high. We have 13% of young people that are aged 14 to 24 that are unemployed. It's extremely high. 这个是很高. And for me, that is not acceptable because I know when I talk to young people that many of them are not even accounted for. They are working in jobs that are contract work. They are working in jobs that are precarious, that are not stable. They might be working in a field that is completely different from what they studied. And so this is the disconnect that I see happening in our country. And it takes leadership. It takes a federal government that is going to pay attention to young people and make sure that they're equipped with the skills and knowledge that are for the jobs of tomorrow. And that's the perspective that I really hope to bring after working 9 years in the public school system, because I've seen how we've worked hard to transform education, to not just talk about English and math. It's more than that. You've got to teach children what are the jobs out there. Give them opportunities for apprenticeship, for co-op programs, so they can get hands-on experience. And then they can realize what they're passionate about. But those experiences have to be aligned to where the economy is going. And so there's a lot of opportunity here for us to make a difference.
你这么一说，我是理解了，就是说。而且我理解了，不仅仅是这3个级别的教育的一个大概的分配，而且呢，我理解你为什么要去竞选国会议员的原因之一了。就是据我理解，不知道对不对啊？就是听您讲，其实教育主要看起来是省里这个事情，然后呢，市里是做具体操作的，但省里是给钱的。但是联邦这块的话呢，有一点联系，但是目前的设置里头，在联邦的国会层面上呢，教育受重视的程度不如世界各地，所以您觉得有责任和有义务去把这个教育这件事情在国会里头呢，就是发出更多的这个声音，然后呢，把教育这个事情呢，让更多的人关注，国会里的地位要提高一点。哎，那您这是哪个选区？您先给我介绍一下选区的这个范围，还有一些情况。
Well, Scarborough North is a very diverse riding. It is bounded by Steeles, Nielsen, 401, and Midland.
Steele 南面啊 ，401。
401。
就东面 这是一个新的选区是吧？
Yes, this is a new riding. Because of overpopulation, the old riding is called Scarborough Rouge River, but it's now been divided, and so the west portion of it is now called Scarborough North, and that is the riding. It's a very diverse riding. You drive around and you see churches, mosques, temples. You go into the local supermarkets and you have areas that have high concentration of Chinese living there. Around 40% Chinese background in this riding, and so it's very diverse riding.
哦，就这个区的话，还蛮多元文化的，就是您讲的，有40%左右的华人是吧？
Yeah.
好，那陈议员，刚才您介绍了您的一些选区啊，那么选区我们已经知道这个范围，那么在这个范围内，您就是说对这个选区的了解，然后在您服务这个选区这几年，您都做了些哪些具体的事情？
Well, for me, I believe that we have to create more opportunity. We've got to make sure that our middle class is growing and that they're able to make ends meet. I see every day the challenges of families. There's so many people there without stable jobs. There are many poor families, new immigrant families that come here and they have to work multiple jobs just to be able to support their families. And so for me, it's about a better vision for Canada. Right now, we've seen the middle class disappear over the past 10 years under the current government. We've seen youth unemployment hit record high rates. And to me, that's not acceptable. For me, I hope to bring my experience working as a local representative to engage the grassroots, because I believe that we have to have citizens and people that are engaged within politics. Get the young people informed and engaged and enthusiastic about making a difference in their communities, and I think we need to push forward those policies. One of the things I hope to champion is a national education strategy, because we have to have a better vision for our young people. There's such an important role for our private sector to play. When it comes to, for example, training young people, we should be giving tax credits to businesses that are able to bring in apprenticeships or co-op students to give them experiences. And so to me, there needs to be a broader vision. We've got to work together and stop pointing fingers. Right? We can't point fingers, it's the province or it's the federal government or it's the school board or it's the city. We've got to find a way to work together. I know that in Scarborough North, in the riding that I'm running to represent, we have a transit issue. People have to take an hour and a half to get from Scarborough to downtown where they work or might go to school. And so one of the things I'm hoping to champion is to build a subway along Shepherd. It will be prosperous for the local businesses, it will be good for the community, it will improve access for those that work and go to school in other parts of the city. And it's also good for the environment. Okay. The less cars we have on the road, the better it is for our environment. So to me, there's many issues, but I'm here to listen, and that's the style that I bring, because I believe it's so important to engage the grassroots, to make sure that their issues are being heard, and that's what I hope to do. It's a different type of representation, but I've had the experience of doing it for the past 9 years, and I hope to bring that type of representation to the federal level.
好像我今天还是昨天我看的这个有一个新闻，就是讲是安省出台了一个叫做 ISGO 啊，叫 International Student with a Job Offer 这个政策，就是说，他好像有了雇佣的话的这个国际学生，他就立马可以申请移民了。那这是一个省的呀，还是一个联邦的呀？移民好像又是个联邦的事儿，是吧？这个事情您知道吗？
Yeah. Yes. So I want to back up, because I think at the end of the day, no matter what level of government you are, we have a responsibility to play. In fact, through my experience at the school board, we have partnerships with the federal government. For example, the newcomer centers that are funded through Citizenship and Immigration Canada, they actually give the money to the school boards. Yes, and we open those centers. So I have one that that I really championed and fought for, and we have it open now in the riding. In the Malvern Town Centre, there's a newcomer centre for adults and a newcomer centre for youth, and that is a federally funded program that we deliver as the Toronto District School Board, and it's a good example of how different levels of government need to work together to support our young people. When it comes to programs like the one you mentioned, it's so important because I look at it and I say, Canada can play such an important Canada can play such an important role in the world because so many immigrants come to Canada, and I see it each and every day. Right? All you have to do is walk down the streets in Toronto and you see people from many different cultures all living in the same space. And to me, that is an incredible feeling to be able to experience that. Because if we're serious about those global issues that are important in the world, then we have to have a better understanding of each other. And we have to be able to live together in harmony. And Toronto is such a prime example of that because of the diversity that we have. And I see how important it is to promote those types of exchanges. TDSB, Toronto District School Board, has one of the highest number of international students studying in our school system. And in fact, over 50% of them come from China, because that 50%. Is over 50% come from China, and they come to Toronto because of that diversity. And I see the impact it has because it's not just about having students and charging tuition fees. Yes, it's a way of generating revenue, but what to me is more important is the cultural exchange. That an international student can come here and sit together with a Canadian-born student and talk to each other and exchange ideas and broaden each other's view of the world. There's such a positive thing in that, and I think it sets a very hopeful tone for the future that we can do that. And so when we talk about international students, they're here to contribute to the economy as well. They're here to provide cultural diversity that is so important for our next generation. And if they're here and contributing, then what better way than to provide an opportunity for them, if they wish to stay in Canada, to find a job, to have those experiences. So programs like this are so wonderful because it creates that pathway for our international students.
对，讲到这儿，我讲一个题外话啊，就是您刚才说这个数字，我也是第一次听说，就是超过50%的留学生是从中国来的，在这个多伦多地区啊，这个没有想到。不过想想也是，您又讲到了您是在本地出生的，那您去过中国吗？
I've been to China many times.
Oh.
I believe 8 times I've visited China. Oh. My first time was in 1999 when I had graduated from high school. Yes, and I visited China with my family. We went on a family trip. That was my first experience. And my most recent was a couple years ago. But I've seen through that period a drastic transformation in China, where there has been such incredible development, both in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the education system, and it's really fascinating to see how China has so rapidly transformed itself and grown in a very short period of time.
对啊，99年，这也没多少时间，99年这么短时间去了8次。那么第一次是以个人身份去的，后来您作为教育局的官员，有没有再去中国跟中国的这个政府部门呢和教育局系统有过接触吗？
I have. In 2007, I was part of a delegation of trustees, 教育委员 from the Greater Toronto area, and we visited a number of cities in China, working with Han Ban, and to look at the different educational institutions, to talk about how schools run in China. And it was very fascinating because when I visited personally, I can't just walk into a school, but when I was with the delegation, we got to visit schools, to talk to some of the students, meet some of the teachers, visit with the Education Bureau officials. And so it was a very enlightening experience for me, because we got to learn more about where our students come from, because we have so many that are new immigrants. 都有很多新移民中国来的 so we get to learn and see what their experience is like in China, because that helps us serve our students better.
对那您这个对中国还真的是蛮了解了啊。那么真的是再一次要特别的感谢您把我们华人的声音那么带到了主流关注的这样的一个地方。同时的话呢，也预祝您在10月份的联邦大选当中取得好的成绩。再次感谢您来到加拿大国际电视台的大型时政栏目《议政厅》，谢谢您。
OK，
好，非常感谢，
谢谢。